The a-hole for not wanting to take care of my sick grandfather? First, let me give a bit of context, as the title might suggest an obvious answer. I'm a 19-year-old woman, and I'm currently in a dispute with my toxic family because my grandfather's children refuse to take responsibility for him, even though he has serious health issues. Last Friday, my grandfather suffered a blood pressure spike, temporary blindness, trembling in his mouth, and a severe headache that led to his hospitalization. He has heart problems, high blood pressure, diabetes, and previously suffered a stroke. He has 4 children from a previous marriage and 3 more, my mom and my uncles, from my grandmother. When this happened, I was over 2 hours away, and it was around 10 p.m. I had no way of getting there immediately. By 7 a.m. the next day, I was already on my way. Despite having taken my boyfriend to the airport earlier, this has slight relevance. By 10 a.m., I was already at my grandmother's house. I had requested time off from work, and that's when the problem started. From the moment I arrived, I was questioned about why I didn't show up the exact moment I received the message and why I had gone to the airport with my boyfriend. Since then, I've been taking care of my grandfather almost every day. On the first day, I stayed until late at night, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And after that, they either hired a caregiver or my mom's partner came to help. Yesterday, they asked me to cover from 4 a.m. to 10 p.m. And since I can't do anything else while at the clinic, I've been receiving complaints and emotional manipulation when I express that I'm exhausted. Considering that there are 7 children who could help take care of my grandfather, am I the a-hole for not wanting to take on this responsibility? You're not in the wrong. If they're trying to save money on a caregiver by taking advantage of you, it would be best to charge them accordingly or cut ties with that branch of the family altogether. It's partly about saving money and also about their pride and wanting to look good on social media. Cutting ties isn't an option right now because I have no way to move out at the moment. Comment: they can't force you. At the very least, they should pay you a salary. What they're asking of you is an extremely demanding job. Plus, taking care of elderly parents is the responsibility of their children, and it seems your grandfather had several, not the grandchildren. OP's response: that's one of my complaints. The main problem here is that neither I nor anyone else in the family has the proper skills to care for an elderly person with visual disabilities and neurological issues. Comment: maybe you could look into whether there's any municipal or state aid available for your situation. It's odd that, with so many children, they can't split the costs. Another option would be to sue your uncles to make them financially responsible for their father through a maintenance pension. You could also report to authorities that they're trying to treat you like a servant. I forgot to mention this before. Right now, we're trying to find a caregiver through his Social Security benefits who can take care of both grandparents. But because of money, lawsuits, and other issues, they wouldn't do it themselves. I'm also not in a position to pursue a legal battle. I tried once regarding child support and had to give up, although I managed to get something. But that's a story for another post. Comment: I went through a similar situation a few years ago with my grandmother. She was 76, suffering from dementia, and things got worse after she broke her leg. My grandmother had 6 children, and no one wanted to take care of her except my mother and me. I understand how hard and exhausting it is. There were moments when I didn't want to help or take care of my grandmother because I felt it wasn't my responsibility. Now that my grandmother is gone, I deeply regret thinking that way. Ask yourself, if you had many children and none of them wanted to help, wouldn't you hope at least one person in the world would care for you? I'm not saying you should act as his full-time caregiver, but help as much as you can. Remember, he is still your parents' father. Life will reward you for it. And yes, I recommend that if his children don't want to support him, make them contribute financially. Just because you're young and don't have kids doesn't mean you don't have a life to live. That's what my mom and I did. We took care of my grandmother, but it also meant expenses, which we made sure her other children were responsible for. Lastly, remember that you have a life ahead of you. For your grandfather, as sad as it may sound, he probably doesn't have much time left. Don't be selfish. Make him feel loved. Elderly people often feel the loneliest in this world because their own children abandon them. After all the effort you're making while others are absent, the satisfaction of knowing you weren't like your uncles is something you'll cherish, I assure you. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I'm glad your grandmother is now at peace, and I'm sure that if there's something after life, she's proud of you both. Right now, I feel happy because even though my grandfather's mental state continues to deteriorate, at least during this week I've been with him in the hospital, he's improved from his other health issues. As for having kids, I've never been a mother, but I've always thought that even if they aren't your children, leaving your parents or grandparents in the care of someone who can meet all their needs is an act of love. That doesn't mean abandoning them in a nursing home. Now, when my grandfather is discharged, he'll come home with a therapeutic caregiver. I hope this helps him stay conscious for a longer time with us. The worst part of old age isn't the physical ailments, but watching memories fade away. Today, things seem to be going well. I hope you and your mom are doing well too. You both did your best for your grandmother, and that's something to be proud of. Comment. You're doing an amazing job right now, and I hope you keep it up and don't abandon your grandfather. But you really should have a conversation with your uncles to at least alternate shifts and contribute financially. After all, you have your own life, just like everyone else. This responsibility belongs to all of you. OP's response? No. I don't have kids yet. That's one of the reasons why I'm putting in so many hours. There are shifts, but they're very uneven, and sometimes they're just short visits to switch between the day and night caregivers. My biggest complaint is that if they can come to visit for a few hours, it would lighten the load for those who are there longer. If each child could stay for 2 to 3 hours, it would make things easier for everyone, reduce the caregiver's hours, and save money. Update 1. Update. Brief context. I'm a 19-year-old granddaughter of my grandfather, who has severe illnesses, and my family is practically taking advantage of me by making him almost solely my responsibility. Today, I was planning to post an update about the family dynamics and the situation of each of his children as soon as I got home, but I'm still here. I woke up at 4 a.m. to be here on time at 6 a.m., and now they're more than half an hour late to make the shift change. To everyone saying they're taking advantage of me, you're absolutely right. Today, one of the very few family members who also take turns was supposed to come after me, but they haven't shown up. My mom informed me that my stepdad, once again, not one of his kids, was supposed to come, but now it's been nearly 50 minutes of delays and over an hour without answering calls or messages. So, here I am, folks. I have time to keep responding to messages while I watch the time pass and realize I'm losing my chance at public transportation. For those saying it's my responsibility, this is love. Staying even though I should have left by now, while his children leave him hanging for the second time this week. On Monday, after I left, my mom came to visit him while waiting for my uncle, the only one of his children who actually comes to arrive. After hours of waiting, he sent a message saying he couldn't make it and they had to call an emergency caregiver. The worst part? Aside from disappointing his father, my uncle was supposed to bathe him. And yes, Grandpa had been discharged on Friday, and it was already Monday, and no one had bathed him yet. Clarification. Despite my grandfather's opposition, my mom had to bathe him, and to top it off, she used to work in nursing homes, geriatric facilities. You're not in the wrong. Hire a gerontological assistant, a caregiver, if your relatives don't have time to take care of him. What a disgrace, leaving your grandfather like a dog. Or at least they should pay you minimum wage. Just the idea of asking for payment for taking care of him would make them lynch me. As for the caregiver, they'll assign one as soon as he's discharged from the hospital, thanks to the doctor's requests. Comment. God heard you and provided. Amen. No, you could talk to the social worker or the head nurse about this, and maybe ask them to tell your parents that patient handovers must be respected because their hospital policy or because they affect visiting hours or something else that might get your family's attention. AITA for not wanting to take care of my sick grandfather? After spending almost 18 hours yesterday at the clinic and being left hanging for about 1 hour and 20 minutes, I ran out of public transportation options. The only thing I could do was order an Uber, logically, but not before being abandoned with my grandfather, who eventually fell asleep, tired of waiting for my mom's husband. Let's call him Alan. Alan told me to get in the car, saying he'd drive me to my grandparents' house. So I did. Big mistake. The moment I got in the car, he started a hate-filled rant about the entire family, not too different from what I vent about here regarding my uncles. First, he went off about the uncle who stood up my grandfather, then moved on to the other uncle, the golden child in the family. This uncle lives in another part of the country and has never done anything for his father. Up to that point, it was just the usual family drama that comes out during these situations. However, after chatting normally for a while, Alan began criticizing me for admitting I was exhausted after 5 days of taking care of my grandfather for over 10 hours a day. He started with the same old arguments, you owe it to him or he raised you, which I don't deny. But then he escalated, calling me spoiled and entitled. He gave me a lecture about how I was supposedly all those things because, despite my age, I wasn't, in his words, traveling 2 hours to work 18-hour shifts, as he believes someone my age should be doing. Both Alan and my mom have this false belief that I'm being financially supported by my grandparents, even though they know I've been working 2 jobs lately to save money. One of the reasons I live with them, despite my age, is because they have an unused apartment since my mom moved out when I was 10 years old, when she was around 27 or 28. But apparently, living there at 19 makes me a freeloader. The argument continued until I got home, where my grandmother was already waiting for me with dinner ready. She was worried because, during all that time I was missing, she hadn't been able to reach her daughter or son-in-law, and the lack of updates had upset her. When I arrived, I told her what happened, as she's against what her children have been doing. Comment. Don't listen to that guy. I went through something similar with my grandmother. I lived nearby and was always the one taking her to emergencies and taking care of her since I was 18, because I moved in with her to study and later moved to a nearby apartment. Every time she had a crisis, my mom and aunt, instead of coming to help, would spend their time calling me, complaining that I didn't answer. There was no signal in the ER, and arguing with each other about who should take care of their mother. I was always running around, trying to handle everything, until my grandmother stabilized and stopped lying to the doctors. She was quite a character. In the end, they never showed up to visit her. It was so easy for them to criticize while I was doing everything. So that guy should shut it and face reality. Maintained by whom? How are you supposed to have a job while spending all those hours caring for your grandfather? Another very real thing, and I'm telling you to look into it, is caregiver burnout. While taking care of a sick loved one, you put your own life on hold and isolate yourself from your usual routines. Add to that the emotional weight of caring for someone you deeply love, and it's incredibly stressful. Of course, you're exhausted. This is a heavy situation. I don't think it's about you not wanting to care for him, but rather that it's way too much for one person, especially someone so young. If they tell you you're an adult now, as if turning 2 years older than 17 magically equips you for this responsibility, it's nonsense. They say it to justify leaving you alone with such a huge burden. See if there's someone who can genuinely lend a hand, instead of just offering excuses, leaving you hanging, and then criticizing you when they don't step up themselves. OP's response: I'm sorry you went through something similar. Taking care of family when the rest of the family makes it even harder is extremely challenging. And as for caregiving, now that my grandfather is stable, the only thing they can do is hire a caregiver and visit him. Meanwhile, I'll be looking for a new job after losing mine. Comment. I'm glad your grandfather is stable. That's what matters most. On the other hand, it's good that you realize the madness lies with them, not contributing when there's a crisis. The least they can do is pay for a caregiver. There are 7 of them, probably with stable incomes and as grown adults. What I suggest is that if this happens again, don't let them pressure you. And if you can, stand up to them. Tell them not to fill their mouths with criticism until they've gone to visit their father. Those hurtful things they say are just to guilt trip you while they wash their hands of the situation. It's manipulative. I know your grandfather might feel sad that his children aren't there to care for him, but you shouldn't sacrifice yourself to cover for their shortcomings. I know you're doing it out of love, and I understand. I'm not saying you should abandon him, but if you can, talk to your grandmother about this. She seems like the only one with some decency. You've been there and stepped up, but you can't keep losing your job and putting your life on hold to care for others. I'm telling you this because the situation might be resolved now, but your family might try to pigeonhole you as the one who takes care of everyone and sacrifices her life for the rest. Don't let them put you in that role. They'll steal your life. I know it might sound a bit extreme, but I had a friend in a similar situation. She was much older, in her 60s. She spent her whole life taking care of others, and sadly, she passed away very young. I wish she had enjoyed her life more. She gave so much to others and received very little in return. Generous people like that are incredibly beautiful souls and deserve so much more. And you deserve more too. You can give that to yourself if others don't want to value or respect you.
Thank you for joining us for this story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends so more people can enjoy these tales. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Take care and we'll see you in the next story. See you soon.